Hello, and welcome back to Suzerain, the Republic of Swordland. And in today's video, we'll start with this report, Welland Border Report. Chief of Armed Forces, Velkin Kurger, reported that the Wezek Armed Forces are moving north towards the town of Vernel. On their way, many British villages were assaulted, and the initial reports indicate a high death toll. As they are approaching closer to the border, Wezek Army's movement will be observed closely. Many displaced refugees from the battles have seen moving toward the Swordish border. They have been turned around forcefully to ensure the complete defense of the border. Just look over here. Look, ooh, weird borders for free cities. Ooh, ignore whatever that was about. Who knows what that was about? Just ignore it. Victory Day celebrations. Jin, the nationalist stronghold of Swordland, is gearing up a massive celebration of Victory Day. According to the mayor, this year's festivities will be the biggest yet, with politicians from all across the country, including the president, expected to attend. Victory Day, which commemorates the end of the Swordist Civil War, is celebrated throughout Swordland, but the largest and most extravagant celebrations always take place in the cities of Amrika and Jin. According to the mayor, this year, even the Amrikans will be in awe. The city, which has a long history of nationalism and militarism, uses the holiday to display its military might and patriotic fervor. This year's celebrations promises to be no different, with parades, fireworks, and speeches planned throughout the day. As always, there are concerns about the potential for violence, especially given the current political climate. But officials are confident that the security measures will be sufficient to ensure a safe and successful event. Swordland Today has received an exclusive update about President Rain's constitutional reform process. According to an insider sources, Rain met today with PFJP head Franz Richter in an attempt to secure the party's votes in the assembly. This meeting could be an indicator that the president is truly aiming for democratic reform, as opposed to paying lip service or using the opportunity to consolidate his own power. We will know more once the results of the meetings are announced. Richter backs Rain's reforms. At a party conference today, PFJP came out in support of Anton Rain's constitutional changes. Leader Franz Richter announced that the proposal President Rain had submitted to them met their party's standards for democratic reform. It's time our parties stand together in order to make changes to our outdated constitution, said Richter, calling his party members to get support to the proposal. Despite a complete show of support from the PFJP members, the group's deputy chairwoman, Ms. Schill, protested Richter's call for bipartisanship and blamed the party's leadership for handing Swordland to President Rain on a silver platter. She was seen leaving the meeting during Richter's speech in protest. It was unclear whether the draft that will now go before the Assembly is Rain's original one, or if it has been changed with Richter's input. It is also unclear if Ms. Schill's protest will gather support within the party against the proposal. What is clear is that PFJP's votes. Rain's chances are successfully passing the reforms in the Assembly just got a lot higher. Yeah! PFJP conference. At yesterday's party conference of the PFJP, Franz Richter announced that he will be giving his full support to the constitutional changes proposed by the USP. He asked the members of the party to follow him in the endeavor and set aside their differences for the greater good of the country. Yay! Alright. Oh boy, we don't have the government budget. Well, time to go negative. Yeah. The SSC, Underhaul Construction, and Tourist holding companies have put forth their bids in the hopes of winning the government contracts for a new ambitious investment project. Which company should we pick to lead the project? We're gonna pick Underhaul Construction, and that's fine. I'm sure that's okay. Nobody panic. Nobody panic. Nobody panic. Okay? Okay. After a meeting of the rector and the brief tour of University of Velgen, we gathered in a room with Ciara. The entire campus was visible from the windows. Students were reading books, studying, and having picnics under the trees. It reminded me of my own time at the University of Culture, at least the more carefree moments. Reminiscing about the past? Yes, it had its ups and downs, but it was still fun. And now we're growing old and bitter. Let's not get sidetracked. I want to start off by saying this. Stagnation doesn't get anyone anywhere. Simply maintaining my ministry's funds got us a sitting duck with dozens of issues left unsolved. The state having had to rely on privatization funds is a disgrace. We are letting private interests meddle in the most essential service, learning. New private schools are increasing the disparity of the service in education. Lower-income households who can't afford the private school in their district might need to send their children to a public school far away. Although I insist that the funds are still necessary to close the gaps in services, I can't say we have been entirely off track. I want to thank you for leading our education system in the right direction. Traditional teachings have long prevented proper progress. You played a huge part in this too, Sierra. Except we failed. But anyways, moving on. What do you mean we failed? We're just not finished yet. She nodded and brought out a stack of papers from her bag. Spinning her ballpoint pen, she went through the papers, organized some of them together. Our ministry has prepared the necessary framework regarding how to spend the funds we've gained through school privatization. I've outlined 3 potential options. We can build new rural schools, improve the standards of existing ones, or increase salaries for all educated workers. We have the capability to implement only one of these options. Tell me about the plan to build new rural schools. The issue is very critical, as we are losing many young people to ignorance and illiteracy. Switzerland's rural population is full of untapped potential. With enough education, these people could be an asset to our workforce and society. Look at how United Cortana is pushing past Arcadia in education and research. It's because most of the rural populace has access to schools. Why should increase the salaries of education workers? The job itself should be held in higher regard and be compensated accordingly. Agreed. We don't have the funds to do that, which sucks. These are people who have chosen to dedicate themselves to the betterment of others, to helping raise the next generation. We ought to give them what they deserve. What does improving rural schools entail? Where to start? At the very least, they need new equipment and materials. Many of these schools are facing a shortage of desks and textbooks, ones that haven't been updated since before the Sol administration. If teachers lack the resources to give Sordish youth a proper education, it can't be as bad as if they... It can be as bad as if they don't go to school at all. She put down her pen and looked at me. We're going to build new rural schools. Our primary goal must be to increase access to education. It feels gratifying that we are finally serving the people directly. I'll pass it down to the ministry. That's all there is for now. I've talked with Miss Suno to schedule some time to discuss the curriculum. She's a very astute woman, your secretary. You may want to consider promoting her. We'll meet again very soon. Thank you for your efforts. Sierra put the papers back in her bag and left the meeting room. Yeah, accessible rural education. With effective strategies implemented by the government, access to education in rural areas significantly improved. Many students who previously had limited opportunities to learn are now able to attend school, thanks to various initiatives such as building new schools, increasing funding for education in rural areas, and providing transportation for students who live far away from schools. Overblown rights case appealed. Today, the political motivated and controversial court case by Ishval Ursin has made its way to the Supreme Court to be reviewed. The government of Bergia, Phoenix Braun, has dismissed the presence of systematic racism in the region of Bergia and accusations against his resettlement policies, citing that the British are being influenced by the British Freedom Front, who wishes to radicalize the people for their dark aims. Eyes are now on Chief Justice Hawker, the Supreme Court, to determine if the case has legal grounds or not. Many justices have already come forward to dispute the claim that the Constitution is not being upheld by the state of Swordland when it comes to the treatment of British people. Ugh. A new mega project, Binfi International Airport. President Rain has just announced the plans for a brand new international airport in Binfi. As part of the announcement, Underhaul Construction has been awarded with the contract, and they will be taking over the daunting task that will transform the city. On completion, the mega project will provide a much-needed boost to the trade and infrastructure, not just Binfi, but the entire Gruni region. Woo! Welland refugees fleeing to Sordish border. As Welland President Viktor Smollett continues his operation against British insurgents in his country, a wave of people, Wessex, Sordish, and British, have been attempting to flee the conflict and cross the border into Swordland. According to a report from the Alliance of Nations, the situation inside Welland is becoming increasingly complex, with many different groups and factions entering and leaving the country. The AN reports status that the international reporters are no longer being allowed inside Welland, and the information for the country is becoming increasingly difficult to attain. It also explicitly warns the neighboring countries of an upcoming refugee crisis, and raises to see how the Rain administration will deal with the influx. Ursin case goes to the Supreme Court. Ishval Ursin, a fearless British lawyer and civil rights activist, has taken on Governor Phoenix Braun in his high-stakes lawsuit that challenges the systematic oppression of the British community in Swordland. Ursin has filed a case in this Court of Appeals against Governor Braun for violating the constitutional rights of equality before the law, also arguing that the Articles 6 and 7 of the Constitution is in conflict with the rights of people defined in Article 100. He argues that the special zone and bronze policies, including the unjust resettlement order, infringe upon the rights of the property of the British citizen and violate their rights as citizens of Swordland. Now, in a glimmer of hope, the Supreme Court has accepted to review the case. But let's be real, when has justice ever been served in this country? We have seen the government oppress the Bluish people for far too long. We cannot expect anything different from the corrupt judicial system, with Orso Hawker as the Chief Justice. Yeah. Press freedoms in UC, a diminishing space. United Cortana grip on its media landscape continues to tighten, casting shadows of doubt over the genuineness of information emanating from the UC information space. The People's Daily Tribune, once hailed for its objective reporting, has experienced a 50% drop in its content distribution due to its stringent censorship. Recent laws enacting have further constrained independent journalism, leading to self-censorship among reporters. In contrast, Vagsland's media sector displays slightly greater openness, although it's not without its challenges. Geopolitico recently investigation into alleged human rights abuses in Southern Cortana, particularly in Urzurstan and Slovakia, faced heavy restrictions and controlled narratives. The Red Unity Chronicle also shed light on a case from Zol attack, which disappeared from public view within hours. As the majority of the UC became increasingly skeptical of state-guided media narratives, the clamor for transparency and genuine reporting continues to grow. Good. Cortana and Security Pact. CSP's Unity Conference in Galmland, a commitment to harmonize. The CSP Unity Conference, recently held in Gomland, marked a pivotal juncture in resolving ideological dissonance within the Alliance. Gomland's influential leader, Brigadier Hofdatter, hosted the gathering amid a burgeoning climate of ideological disagreement propelled by the Glummish Manifesto. This innovative interpretation of Carlos Marquez' communist theory, with its focus on decentralized planning and worker self-management, has stirred up an ideological storm within the CSP. While Vag's Vandish socialism, sharing similar decentralist sentiments, is seemingly more compatible with the Gulmish Manifesto, they diverge notably in their stance on the international cooperation. The manifesto leans towards a cautious approach, preferring to build a self-reliant economy, whereas Vaglandish socialism champions interdependence, seeing it as a conduit for shared prosperity and security. This difference, albeit subtle, has led to real-world implications, like the instatement of trade tariffs between Gomland and Vagsland, demonstrating the impact of ideological dissonance on economic policies. The Uni Conference, despite the ideological contention, stressed the importance of common objectives, collective security, economic cooperation, and human rights. Now that seems good. Read the port. Minister of Justice files Ersin v. Swordland concurrence. The Ministry of Justice has reviewed the Ersin v. Swordland case, but forward its concursive opinion before sending the dispute to the Supreme Court. The Minister of Justice, Nia Margna, came forward agreeing with the case of Ishval Ersin and pointed out a majority court dissent would do disservice to the legal precedent of future constitutional rights cases. The case is now in the hands of the Supreme Court. Gossam State shares divestment. The state can sell its shares in Gossam. Given the financial landscape revealed by the Gossam report, a strategic decision on the divestment of our shares in Gossam looms. It is not possible to consider selling an amount of our stake in the company or keep our shares for potential future profit sharing. The future outcome will vary based on the active share price of the company. We'll keep them for potential profit share in the future. Briefing on the current curriculum in schools. Sierra had scheduled a short meeting at the Ministry of Education to discuss the current curriculum taught in schools. The ministry building was located in the government district, right next to the Ministry of Health. It was tall, narrow, and wedge-shaped, like a slightly open book. Near the front gate, there were many statues of world-renowned scientists and thinkers. Largest, of course, was of Artvin Einstein. Okay, amazing. Hey, Einstein, the greatest scientist of all time. Hey, Albert Einstein, how are you doing? Above the main interest was the familiar inspiration. Something. Oh, education is the premise of progress in all societies, in all families. Inside the building, I was greeted by Sierra's assistants. They led me to a meeting room where she was waiting inside. She stood and gripped my hand. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Sierra. I'll cut straight to this chase. The lack of government resources have halted our plans for education reform, but there's one important change that can still be made. It involves evolution versus creationism. As it currently stands, schools across Swordland can decide whether to include evolution, creationism, or both in their curriculum. Rural schools often decide in favor of creationism only, which puts students at a disadvantage when it comes to entering university. The effect is especially noticeable among young women. My suggestion is to make the teaching of evolution mandatory, and preferably ban creationism altogether. I don't see a problem with teaching our children both theories. That would be one way to compromise, yes, but does creationism really help open the minds of our children? The way I see it, it promotes the blind acceptance of the world as it is. No facts or verification needed. Children should be encouraged to think critically and ask questions. Creationism and other religious teachings hinder that. See, the problem is I don't know if the country's ready for that. I mean, it already failed to actually get the... you do have a point. Perhaps there is no place in creation in school. That's great to hear. It sounds like we are already aligned on the matter. Lucien Gallade knocked and entered. Excuse me, some urgent business kept me away. Welcome, Mr. Gallade. Mr. President, Miss Walda. Oh, why were you late? The General Staff had some concerns about the Rumburg border. Already provided you with a report, nothing else. Glad you came. I need to hear Oh wait, I didn't mean to say some opinions that make sense. I meant some more opinions. I didn't read that fully. Well, whatever. Ignore that. Nobody cares. Oh, very well. Continuing from my previous point, it is my conviction that we should require the mandatory teaching of evolution in Swordland's public schools and cut creationism completely out. If you want children from rural areas to have the same opportunities as their urban counterparts, this is the way. Opening students' minds and reducing the role of religion in schools will also lead to more equality between young men and women. Don't bring your pet cause into this, Miss Wada. You failed your reforms, and now you want to remove belief from schools. Advancing women's rights is more than just a pet cause. Both of you gentlemen must know that. Also, we all know why the education reforms failed, don't we? Sierra looked at me. I mean, I'm not saying anything. I didn't defund you or anything. I gave you the same budget, and I specifically defunded 2 branches of the government just to keep you having the same budget. This is on you. I'm sorry I wanted to stop us from going to a potential pandemic, which, by the way, is beginning. So thank goodness I gave extra money to the healthcare budget. Get over yourself. Going back to the topic, although I myself believe in evolution, we must be careful not to alienate our rural conservative voter base. We owe a lot to their support. Forcing their school districts to teach evolution could irreparably damage our standing with them. Every modern nation is reducing or removing creationism in their curriculum. Yet we are supposed to allow schools to promote fundamentalism. And yes, sexist ideas from 1,000 years back. So this is what we are doing now, copying what other nations are doing instead of paving our own way. If it works, why not? Look at this analysis. It is clear that the superpowers are doing something right. Should we reinvent the wheel, Mr. Gallade? You speak as if we don't import any influence from other countries. That's not what I said. Their voices started to get louder and louder. I held up my hands for silence. We can... We can still allow creationism to be taught alongside evolution. Sierra, you could live with that. Yes, although I don't like it, I still believe schools are no place for religion. I don't like it either. You'll have to prepare to lose a lot of voters. Sierra looked at me in the eye. It is your decision. Don't forget, future generations of Swordfish youth are counting on you. I will make the teaching of evolution mandatory, but schools might promote creationism alongside if they wish. Unfortunate, but it will have a better outcome than banning creationism altogether. I disagree. Rejecting creationism would have been a signal that we are rejecting Swordland towards a scientific, technologically advanced future. They turned and looked at each other. Lucian lifted his eyebrow, and Sierra held his gaze for a couple of seconds. The meeting ended shortly after. Yeah, I'm not the happiest about it, but, you know, what you gonna do? Hey, our growth is going back up. You know, that's all that really matters. Honestly, all the rest of this, I want to change things for the better, but that's the background stuff. Our growth and getting out of this recession is my #1 priority, more than anything else. So I'm just glad we're doing that. But anyways, I think this is a good time to go ahead and end this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button. And as always, peace. Hello, and welcome back to Suzerain with the Republic of Swordland. And today's video, well, we just did stuff that gave us a lot of different things going on. Agland economy stabilizes. Thanks to the investment made by Swordland, the Agland region is stabilizing its economy. However, the region is still facing economic challenges and struggles to achieve sustainable growth. Hey, you know what? Woo! Under new law, creationism doctrines are optional from all educational institutes. However, evolution doctrines must be mandatory. Every educational instructor is required to have a certification under evolution subjects to qualify for the job. Kezaro raises the British question. Yesterday, in the Grand National Assembly, NFP leader Kezaro Kibner proposed a law that would make Swordish the only language accepted in educational institutions, boldly standing up for Swordish culture and tradition. In this law, the Unified Education Language Act is squarely aimed at the British community, whose integration into Swordish society has long posed a problem. Educating children solely in the official language of the country will help cement their Swordish identity and quash the threat of British independence in Swordland, said Kibner in his speech to the Assembly. Yeah, sure, whatever. Deer prepares for Day of Dissension. The city of Deer is busy preparing for the Day of Dissension, the annual celebration of the founding of Nurity. Though religion plays a smaller role in Swordish daily life than in years past, the day still holds special importance for many Nurs, thousands of whom have already begun undertaking the pilgrimage to the tomb of St. Dast. The cathedral in which it is located, Deer Archsanctuary, is currently undergoing renovations set to be completed in time for the festivities. In accordance with presidential tradition, Anton Rain will be making an appearance at the event. Nationalize the Big Four now. As the debate about privatization versus nationalization intensifies in the capital, the whole Sword Post firmly believes that President Rain should come down on the side of nationalization for all the so-called Big Four companies, including the currently fully private Heart of Swordland and Bergiel Castile. Full nationalization would prevent price gouging, prevent CEOs like Marcel Carnetti from consolidating power, but even the government taking minority ownership of both companies would go a long way towards ensuring they act according to state interests. Creationism or evolution? Rain says both. Under the pressure to catch up with the education system of Arcadia and United Cortana, President Rain decided to enforce the teaching of evolution in public schools. We can expect to see some pushback against this decision, especially in Swordland's rural areas where creationism has long been the default. President Rain did specify that teaching creationism will still be allowed, but this may not be enough to mollify religious conservatives, and it will only anger left-wingers who are gunning for creationism to be banned. Privatization, the future of Swordland. Don't let the pro-government elites fool you. Nationalization of Swordland's Big Four corporations would be a disaster for our country. Instead, we should advocate for the privatization of state-owned enterprises, Neta Mining and the Sword State Corporation. Both companies have grown sluggish from lack of competition. Even private interests, being a minority stake, could lead to a greater innovation and brighter future. Rain curriculum compromises forces schools to evolve slightly. President Rain, perhaps swayed by the valid arguments by Education Minister Sierra Walda, made the decision to make evolution a mandatory part of public school curriculum. The switch is a huge step forward for Swordland's rural youth, who have long been at educational disadvantage compared to their urban counterparts. However, in concession to the backwards-thinking conservatives, school will still be allowed to teach creationism alongside evolution. We can only hope students choose to listen to science and ignore religious propaganda. An ideological chess game in Rika. A deep dive into the working as the EOTake plan reveals more than just economic undertones. It is an intricate plan to advance Melivist ideologies and strategic battleground. Sources have indicated that substantial funds from the plan are channeled to support Melivist organizations and educational structures in Rika, a region poised between UC Malivist model and Arcasian capitalism. It seems the investment is not just about infrastructure, but also ideological indoctrination. While Arcasian interests jostle for influence, the EOTake plan preferential treatment of these battlegrounds suggests a broader strategy, tipping the balance in United Cortana's favor and away from Arcasian capitalist outreach. The real question remains, will Rika's future be determined by economic development or ideological warfare? The global community watches with bated breath. Volgan. Economic report from Volgan. As the economy stagnates, Volgan is reporting a slight dip in employment rates as well as shutting of some local small businesses. However, some larger corporations remain unaffected, and several of the city's bigger cultural concerns are reporting growth. The local statistics office will continue to oversee the mixed signals. Okay, could be worse. Rehabilitation of Quinal, the balancing act of ATO. Amidst growing tensions, the ATO is engaging in a delicate balancing act with Quinal, a key member showing signs of distancing itself from full membership to observer status. Centered to this shift is a dispute resolution between Quinal and Arcasian PMC, which has fueled concerns over sovereignty, rules-based order, and autonomy for Quinal. The ATO has responded to these concerns with serious warnings to PMC's CEO and a series of concessions aimed at reaffirming Quinal's autonomy, standing while retaining its essential alliance ties. The flexibility of ATO in addressing Quinal's concerns reflects the strategic importance of the member state, and the alliance commitment to balance member sovereignty with collective security interests. Republic of Welland. Welland operations a mixed success. Welland President Viktor Smolik is drawing his operations against the Bloodish Freedom Front to a close. The consensus is that while Welland army went a long way towards neutralizing the Bluish threat, there were many preventable casualties. Furthermore, despite Welland's best efforts, not all hideouts have been eradicated, and anti-Smolik sentiment is at an all-time high among the remaining insurgents. I saw that coming, yeah. Language bill prepared by Kessero is bringing a bill which aims to unify Swordish education by making Swordish the only language accepted by educational institutions, excluding specific foreign language studies. Chief Strategist Lucian Gallade has prepared a well-planned lobbying effort in the Parliament, which would specifically sway on-the-fence MPs for the upcoming constitutional vote. The plan includes lavish parties, gifts, and even some political favors. Should we go ahead with the plan? Oh, personal wealth. Yeah, I'll spend some personal wealth. If it was government budget, no. But I'll spend some personal wealth to do that. Why not? Attending the Victory Day. Surge drove us to the city of Jin, the stronghold of Swordish nationalists, for an event organized by the opposition parties to discuss current events. In reality, it was probably a publicity stunt to show Swordland that the leaders of the assembly could sit around the same table. The Nationalist Front Party, which governed the city, undoubtedly had the biggest hand in the organization meeting. It was not a coincidence that it fell on Victory Day. Today was a day of special symbolic importance for Swordland. Every year on the 14th of March, proud patriots from all ages gather to celebrate the end of the Swordish Civil War and Torquon Sol's victory. Jin had survived one of the worst atrocities of the war, and Victory Day celebrations were the most jubilant in all of Swordland. Originally, only Peter and I were scheduled to attend, but after learning about new developments with Ishval Urson's case, Nia Morgna was invited as well. Representatives from both PFJP and NFP had told us they wanted to talk about the case in more detail. Nia departed to hold sword first. Peter and I left on our own a little later. Peter was sitting next to me in the presidential car, skimming through the morning newspaper in silence. Suddenly, Surge rolled down the soundproof window. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, we are about to arrive at the Jin Center of Culture. Miss Mugna had already arrived, and she will be waiting for you. Peter raised his head to look out the window. He folded the newspaper and laid it beside me. Wow, that was too comfortable of a drive to have been this fast. See, I wasn't joking. Surge is the best. No kiddin', my driver Sveva can't hold a candle to him, although I sure wouldn't mind navigating her dangerous curves one day. Nah, I should ride with you guys more often. I can't believe I could actually read on the go. You are embarrassing, sir. I'm no special man. It's the Cadilla. Serge took a left turn and drove through the tiny streets of Jin. The city looked surprisingly clean and well maintained. There was no sign of the destruction the city suffered during one of the heaviest battles of the Civil War. We slowed down in front of a colorful plaza overlooking a massive concrete building with a giant sign that read, Jin's Center of Culture. Looks like the NFP mayors have really transformed the city. Wasn't this an abandoned warehouse for the longest time? I believe it used to function as a rebel militia base during a little while after the Civil War. Alright, the Black Battalion. It's been a while since I've heard that name. Sorry to bring it up. May it never be spoken again. Serge stopped the car and went outside to hold her doors. Here we are, sirs. I hope you have a great day. We got out of the car and walked towards the entrance of the building. Every spot around us was decorated with the flags of Swordland. The comically large amount of flags almost fully enveloped the buildings around the plaza in marine, white, and gold. At the entrance, Kezaro Kibanier, the head of the Nationalist Front Party, was waiting for us in the iconic brown suit, watching the sky. Look at this guy. So full of himself. How did this clown convince the PFJP to have a trilateral talks with them anyways? Probably the same reason why we're here. It's Victory Day, remember? How can I forget? Lucian's nagged about the importance of the day for 20 minutes straight. It broke my soul. Seeing us arrive, Kezaro approached us with a smile. Thank you for being here on this glorious day, Mr. President and Mr. Vice President. As the former mayor of Jin, it's an honor to welcome you to this fine city. This looks like you were a good mayor. Maybe you should think about running for local office again. Thanks for your kind word, but I'm sure I'll do an even better job as president. Besides, as you can see, our current mayor doesn't need my help. I mean, I'd be fine if you ran for a local office again. It would be a good mayor. We shook hands. Thank you for organizing this, Mr. Kibner. The representatives of the PFJP and Minister Morgan are already inside the private meeting room. Hopefully we'll be finished before the festivities start. Kessero gestured at the doors behind him. Shall we? Why not? Before we go, is there any way we can discuss how you can help us with the constitutional changes? I'm afraid not. Besides, it's neither the time nor the place to have a conversation. I understand. Of course, I'm not saying nothing can change. The results of today's meeting can still possibly influence some of our members, but let's go inside now. Please, follow me. We entered the building and walked through a massive conference hall until we approached a door towards the back of the building. We'll have the meeting here. Kessler opened the doors for us, and we entered the meeting room. PFJP's leader, Franz Richter, and its deputy, Manali Suhel, was already seated at the left side of the table. As soon as we entered, Nia came to greet us. After showing our seats, Kezaro sat down next to his deputy, Remis Halsard. This is such a meaningful day. Thank you for coming here on behalf of our parties. But despite the festive atmosphere, we in the PFJP want to raise a few important concerns about the worrying state of affairs in Swordland. Kezaro stopped for a moment to check his notes. Very worrying indeed. Mr. Richter and his analysis have been working on analysis of the blood problem. As soon as they brought it up, we gave our support without reservation. The blood problem? Mr. Hull, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the analysis is about racism and radicalization in Swordland. Our main topic is the case of Urzen and versus Swordland. Please don't try to spin it. Of course, Miss Suhel, Mr. Holstron. Just wanted to point out that this analysis was focused mainly on topics related to the Bluish people. I'm surprised that your parties have conducted a joint analysis. We thank the NFP for assisting our research, of course. This is by no means a joint analysis. Our parties have very vastly different opinions. I will hear you out, but no, I will not act on anything before talking to the representatives of the Bluish community. Let's get back on track, ladies and gentlemen. He gestured at friends. I want to give the word to Mr. Richter to explain the issue. Thank you. Our analysis of the current tensions between the British and Swordist population of Swordland displays a worrying picture. As much as I hate to say it, the threat of the British Freedom Front is getting real again. The situation with Rumburg and Welland is very concerning. The increasingly discriminatory actions of the governor of Bergy are resulting in the radicalization of many young British people. Distressingly, the number of radicals have almost doubled after the implication of our armed forces in the Operation Bear Trap. I must also point out that the recruitment numbers of the BFF have significantly increased within nurse communities. Peter frantically looked through his papers. That is correct. The reports now show that 39 nurse sanctuaries in Bergy are now classified as red threats by the authorities. Many priests in the region are also suspected of having ties to the BFF. The religious harmony bill would have just directly crippled this network they established within our sanctuaries. The threat to the BFF poses is a direct one. This issue requires direct action that would bear direct result. I'm disappointed by the lack of action taken by the USP administration. Your bill would have unnecessarily raised the already high tensions. You did well by vetoing it, Mr. President. Our suggestion is to finally enforce the official language of our country as stated in the Constitution. We are working on the Unified Language Act. It is directly aimed at breeding the grounds of the British Freedom Front. The police have infiltrated 32 BFF training grounds in the remote towns around Bergia that posed as middle schools. Despite all the evidence, similar schools keep popping up. So-called activists are constantly blocking Never Braun's attempts to stop these schools, claiming he is attacking their right to language. He is. You can't take away the British people's right to be educated in their own language. This is insane. Please read the proposal carefully. It does not take away anyone's rights. It only gives the state a way to control the radicalization in these schools that teach British nationalist propaganda. And according to the Constitution, the language of Swordland is Swordish. Nothing is being done to enforce that. We are breaching Constitution. This law simply enforces that. With all due respect, Mr. Kimmler, this bill is not strong enough. The British language should be completely banned. You know, people like Miss Suen and Miss Mordnell will never even vote for your watered-down bill. Remus? Man, of Remus being like, you're not extreme enough, dude. Casserole repositioned himself on his chair and continued. True, it does not ban British language or British education. Instead, makes Swordish mandatory to learn for everyone living in this country, as well as to decrease the tension in the long term. That is a fair point. However, the wording of the bill is far too vague to work as intended. It gives the government too much power over educational institutes. I disagree. The language is quite clear, and it is in line with the Constitution, but we can still improve it, of course. It is true that it gives more control, but it is a necessary compromise. I'll have to read it in detail to decide if I can support it. The BFJP will not allow this bill to pass the Assembly. Let's not make statements that the party hasn't agreed on yet. Interesting. This is very interesting. Monali looked furious. She opened her mouth to respond, then read the room and closed it again, as if the PFJP has the influence to change the outcome. If I may continue with our analysis, the situation is already connected to Rumburg, as everybody already knows. In the case of future incursion, BFF forces in Swordland could become an existential threat. With all due respect, I already received this information from Internal Affairs. Tell us something we don't know. Just let me finish, Mr. President. He adjusted his tie and continued. That makes dealing with the armed militants crucial in the short term. I'll be honest, I myself have underestimated this threat. But judging by the current climate, a spark is all the BFF needs to start violence on a mass scale again. Our analysis matches with what the Ministry of Interior shared with us. But despite this fact, we believe the Ministry is hiding information from us, and just actively fueling the tensions behind the scenes. As much as I now support a strict response against the BFF, it must also be coupled with the expansion of rights for the British people. This is the only way to fight against radicalization. That is, I definitely agree with extending rights as well. That is BFF propaganda. What rights are we talking about here? What can Sword and Swordland do that a Blood cannot? You are using soft language as a cover-up for your willingness to negotiate with terrorists. You are a BFF apologist, Mr. Richter. Remus shouted the last sentence. Peter tapped on the table to get his attention. Please don't raise your voice, Mr. Holstord. The mood in the room had turned sour. Is the USP that desperate for Mr. Richter's support now? Melanie bellowed out a loud laugh. Mr. Richter is the last person to sway the PFJP. What is that supposed to mean? Can we return to the topic? Kessler and Peter nodded. You heard the man. Please finish your point, Mr. Richter. Yes, our administration to take all possible opportunities to expand the rights of Bluish populace while stamping out the BFF militants in parallel. This must be the long-term strategy. However, we require your support with a more pressing matter. This might have very significant consequences for our Bluish citizens. It may serve as a dangerous trigger if we're not careful. And gestured at Melanie. She carefully placed several pieces of paper in front of her. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, and Miss Minister, as you already know, there's a major Supreme Court case at the moment. Isabel Urson is suing the governor of Bergia, Felix Braun, for infringing upon the liberties of British people and demands the Constitution be revised. Because of the argument and the implications, Felix Braun, and consequently the very Constitution of Swordland, is under trial. The fact is, he needs to be punished, and the Constitution must be reviewed. I'm aware of this case. In fact, we are already working on revoking the current special status of Bergia. That's great to hear. We would be very happy if you could share the details once they're more concrete. We will definitely support to that when the time comes, Mr. President. However, the case of Ishval Erzin has a bigger reach than Bergia. Nia raised her hand and spoke. I was actively involved in this case because of the implications of the Constitution. There's no way the Supreme Court will agree with Ishval Erzin on all of the points. Not if all three parties of the Assembly support Erzin together. We can put pressure on them, and we only need them to agree on a few of those points. All parties? Is the NFP really willing to support Erzin, Mr. Kibner? For peace and harmony in Swordland, yes. Perhaps we must clarify the details first. Wow! We're getting a full bipartisan bill with all three parties agreeing? Ooh! Now, what are these compromises? Because for all three to agree, there's gotta be so many compromises here. What's the significance of this case? I'll be straight with you, Mr. President. If the court rules against Urson, this will most likely turn into a BFF campaign for British Revolution. We ask everybody to recognize this. I and the NFP are ready to push for de-escalation and aid our nation during this dangerous time. I'll be completely honest with you. I would never have expected that from you. Remus was visibly annoyed, but kept himself silent. Because the case is now in the hands of the Supreme Court, this ruling will influence all future implications of the law and the decision-making of the lower courts. We have the Minister of Justice here with us, too. I'm sure she would not disagree with what I just said. Nia did not comment, but nodded. I'm afraid Mr. Kibner is right about this. If the court ignores this case now, this may turn into something massive. Therefore, we have to pressure the court to not escalate the already high tensions. What do you really think will happen if the court ignores it? Another all-out BFF rebellion, Mr. President. In my opinion, that would be the preferred outcome. If enemies do truly live within our borders, I'd rather them show their faces earlier than later. That's exactly what those damn Rums want. They are readying for war and waiting to use the tensions inside Swordland against us. We can't allow that to happen. We definitely can't. What is the most likely outcome of this case? The first and most likely option is the Supreme Court completely ignores the argument and rejects it in its entirety. If they ignore all the points and strike against Urson, Governor Braun will be free to follow his discriminatory policies without any obstacles. And in a possible future case, the court's interpretation of the Urson case will be the basis of all future rulings, which opens the way of suspending the rights of non-swords. It would effectively erase any progress that had been made regarding British rights and will embolden anti-British proponents to follow their actions freely. Well, we definitely can't let that happen. Exactly. That is precisely why our expectation is to see different results this time. The stakes couldn't be higher. What are your plans and suggestions? In short, the plan is to release a unified statement to the justices declaring our support for Urzen and explaining why this is so important. The only good results would be if the Supreme Court reissuates its commitment to the pillar of unity and soulism. Mr. President, despite previously being against it, I now completely understand why Swordland still needs soulism. We need unity more than ever. And Article 6 is that unity. We do not need soulless unity. Hesero stared Rimus down and continued. Man, for once, I'm glad you're the leader of the NFP. Keep him as an underling and not in your job. I do not want to have to deal with him. If the court reiterates the definition of sword in Article 6 as an all-encompassing term, they would be acknowledging that Urson and others like him are indeed protected by the rights of the sword peoples, which they are. As a result, the resettlement policy of DR would be reversed, opening the way for Governor Braun's removal of the de-escalation of tensions in Bergia. Is this true, Miss Morga? That is correct, Mr. President. Doesn't that mean that the existence of Bludish people is literally not being acknowledged? Exactly. Our current constitution fails to recognize the Bludish people. It's time we abolish the inherent racism, isn't it? The citizens of Swordland are swords. The Constitution clearly defines that in Article 6. It accompanies everybody. This shouldn't be up for debate. What racism are you talking about? Soulism is based on our civic nationalism, not ethic. I do not understand why someone would go against such broad and inclusive law. I don't see the commies criticizing their identity, Kontanen, when in fact, what country is filled with different ethnicities? I see your point. No, I agree with Mr. Kibner. United Swordlands, I see your point. But I still don't understand why the NFP suddenly had changed of heart. I disagree. The case is important for the greater good of the Swordish nation, and that is what the Nationalist Front stands for. All I'm asking is, if any United Cortana, the Malivis, doesn't call himself Kielvin before Cortanen, why is that Bloods cannot do the same? Why does Swordland have to be divided? You have a point, but I must point out that Cortana is the word for a geographic entity, unlike sword. This is Swordland. You can subscribe to whatever idea you want, but if you're a citizen, you're a sword. This is how nations work. The reality of the Bloods do not respect nor recognize the laws and authority of Swordland. They'd rather separate themselves from swords and protest the very laws that protect them. So they can cry about injustices and ask Swordland to come and save them. I personally not agree with the Bloods or swords, soulless crap. Geesh. I cannot believe the words being thrown around at this meeting. And what is the position of the PFJP? I personally somewhat agree with Mr. Kibner on this. However, our position as the PFJP is that Article 6 does indeed discriminate against non-swords, and having a positive outcome for this case alone doesn't suffice. We agreed to come together in support of Ishvald Urson, but we believe our statement should include acknowledgement of the inherent racism within the Constitution. We must use this opportunity to show the flaws of the Constitution. If the court agrees that there is in fact conflict between the articles or recognize discrimination, and the Hawker court is going to listen to that. Besides, we do not agree with your inherent racism hogwash. If this state that it is our party's opinion and does not reflect the NFP, we won't take part in that. That would make the statement look weak and disorganized. If there's no consistent strategy, I don't think it would work. I think I have enough information to be able to say we are in deep in the mud here. Well, I think the NFP's stance could do some good for the British without provoking the establishment, but even that might be risky right before the vote. But the PFJP stance is too radical. I think it will only antagonize the Supreme Court even further and make them give a worse ruling. I think it might be better to keep our administration out of this. I'm not sure if it's worth the risk right before the vote for our reforms. We might lose all our progress, but the decision is yours. Tell me why we should pressure the court to admit discrimination within the Constitution. Because this is the right thing to do, Mr. President. No, is not the time for weak and superficial actions. We can show the people of Swordland the reality of the situation and create a precedent for future constitutional amendments of these articles. And how do you think the Supreme Court will react if we do it this way? We have to try. If they truly care for the people, they will agree to it. If not, people will see the reality of soul state apparatus. And what do you think, Peter? Peter leaned in and whispered, I don't think this would work, Anton. The court won't be influenced, plus it will further antagonize them against our reforms. We'll definitely lose votes. In my opinion, the PFJP has the most to gain from this. They would be seen as the leaders at the tables, not us. What do you suggest me do, Miss Morgan? Neil leaned in and whispered, I agree with Mr. Richter and Miss Schiller. I personally think we should join them in their statement. But I also agree that Chief Justice Hockner won't have a sudden change of heart because of it. I think I've made my own position clear. However, you know about the current political reality. In the end, it is your decision. I think I have enough information with the PFJP's position. Let me hear the other side. Tell me why we should try to convince them to reiterate their position, Article 6. Because it is the only way to increase tension, and the Supreme Court can't afford to look at it. So they'll have to take the Soul's side. I think this is admitting defeat against Soulism, but Mr. Kibner's right. The Rumberg situation demands extraordinary measures. Is the PFJP willing to join in with that statement? As much as I don't agree with it, we are willing to compromise and join in. But if we are going to go this way, we will still need to make our separate statement as party policy. Melanie was shaking in her seat in fury, but managed to keep herself silent. And how do you think the Supreme Court will react if we do it this way? I truly believe they will be convinced. This is not against their ideology, and that is what Colin Soul intended with the Constitution. We're shooting them with their own guns. Just imagine, all parties of the Assembly are reminded them of their duty. With their own beloved Constitution, Mr. Hockner can't take that pressure. What do you think, Peter? I think this is risky, Anton. But if it works, which it actually might, it could make a big difference. If the court really feels the pressure and accepts it, the lower courts will need to adhere to their interpretation. It might not get rid of legal discrimination, but it could at least decrease it. If we're looking to reduce tensions with the British people, that's one way to do it. But with the vote on reforms coming so soon, it's a real leap of faith. What do you suggest we do, Miss Morgan? I definitely do not agree with Mr. Kibner or Mr. Holston. I do see soulism unity working reality, but I also have to say that pushing the position will likely have a real effect on the outcome of the case. Mr. Hockner can agree with the traditional soul interpretation after all. However, as long as our law enforcement forces are filled with anti-blood officers, I don't believe the change on the ground will be so visible. I think I've heard enough. The USP will join the statement. We will argue that British people are considered soldiers before the law, as Mr. Kibner suggested. Purely, I agree with you more, but I truly believe this is more likely to work. And right now, we have to compromise. There's no other point to it. I actually lean your direction. My character leans your direction completely. But this is a time where compromise is the only way out. That's great to hear. We get to work immediately after the celebrations. I don't like the sound of this. Neither do I, as much as it may be needed. This will only strengthen the soulism of the USP. We all know Sordists don't agree with soulless nationalism. We'll talk about that later, Remus. Sordists will have to listen to me this time. I agree. We will also support the effort for the sake of positive results. We appreciate all your comments, ladies and gentlemen, but now the USP's stance is clear. You should probably end the meeting here. After bidding our farewells, Cicero took us outside the building to join the Victory Day event on the plaza. But, oh no, this video's gone long, but we're about to hit a continue. We might as well finish up this, so we're gonna continue. Foreign investments in Morna's energy sector withdraw. Morna is witnessing a retreat of foreign investments from its energy sector. This unexpected reversal has raised concerns about long-term stability and growth prospects of the local energy industry. The authorities are closely monitoring the situation to understand the underlying causes and devise suitable countermeasures. The Big Three unites against Governor Braun. Yesterday's Victory Day celebrations marked a historic moment for Swordland's political landscape. All the parties in the Assembly, the USP, the PFJP, and the NFP released a joint statement demanding the Supreme Court to remove Governor Braun from office and to serve the justice that is due to the British citizens. The parties brought up the Article 6 of the Constitution, which defines all citizens as swords, encompassing everyone regarding ethnicity. Governor Braun's policies, including the controversial resettlement order, have been accused of infringing upon the rights of British citizens. The statement from the political parties shows a unified front in the fight for justice and equality for all swords, and the reiteration of their commitment to soulism. While we agree that all citizens of Swordland should be treated equally as per the Article 6 of the Constitution, we must question the motives of these parties for coming together at this time. It is important to remember that Governor Braun has been instrumental in bringing stability in Bergia No, he hasn't, of arrest, and his policies have led to economic growth and progress. Nevertheless, we do support the notion that all citizens of Swordland must be treated equally under the law, and Governor Braun must ensure the policies and decisions made by the Special Zone Administration are in line with the principles enshrined in the Constitution. Yet the Supreme Court will consider the party statement and make a just decision, taking into account all factors in play. Co-investment strategy plays off for Gotham. Swordland's co-investment strategy with Frisia and Gotham has been a resounding success. This international cooperation has strengthened Gotham's financial standing and reinforced our nation's reputation as a strategic and pragmatic player on the world stage. By embracing international alliances and shared economic prosperity, we've managed to turn a critical situation around, paving the way for a brighter future for Swordland and its citizens. I mean, look at that growth, it's green! USP, NFP, and PFG display their commitment to tollism. Look, I'm not really I just think this'll work more, okay? Yesterday's Victory Day celebrations were supposed to be a joyous occasion to celebrate Swordland's triumph and peace, but instead they were marred by the USP, PFJP, and NFP's joint statement displaying a unique unity on soulism. We see the statement as merely an attempt to gain political leverage over Governor Braun and urge British votes by capitalizing on the British crisis. The NFP in particular is using the situation to further political interests, which is utterly shameful. This party specifically mentioned in the resettlement order, which has caused much controversy and suffering among the British population. While we support the call for justice and equality for the British population, the statement mentions Article 6 of the Constitution as the basis for their opposition, which refers to everyone in the country as swords, and do not recognize any other cultures. You must remember the Constitution was written by and for the dominant swordist culture. It is inherently racist, and fails to account for the diversity of the people of this land. The Constitution's mere existence reinforces the power structure that enables the discrimination against non-swords. While we welcome the supportive statements for Ishval Urson, the fact that these parties cannot agree with all of his points and admit the racism in our Constitution makes it very difficult for us to believe in any positive change from happening. We must be cautious against this opportunistic behavior of the political parties, especially the NFP, who have a historic history of using populist rhetoric to advance their agenda. The party's sudden show of unity raises questions about their true intentions and motivations. Look, it's the best we could do. It's hard to get an agreement like this, okay? Chapter 3, Victims of Change. Alright, but we'll be moving on to Chapter 3 in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button. And as always, peace. Hello, and welcome back to Suzerain. And today's episode, well, continue forward. Last time we had a lot of issues we unified the party, the parties who make it to tell the Supreme Courts to back a bill. We didn't love exactly how we had to do it, but I think it's the likely way it'll work. Heartbreak for FC Enrica's FC Guildsword secures back-to-back league titles. And in a nail-biting finish to the season, FC Guildsword has once again clinched the Swordist National League Championship, leaving FC Enrica in second place by a mere 1 point. The highly anticipated title race came down to the wire, with both clubs fiercely battling for the top spot. Despite a remarkable season for FC Enrica, their hopes of claiming the league title were dashed in a devastating loss during the FC Guildsword Derby. The closely contested match proved to be the turning point, ultimately costing the FC Enrica the championship. Political assassinations rocked Ventry City and Arcasian election. Ventry City, the bustling metropolis in Arcasia, has been shaken by 2 unprecedented political assassinations during the current campaign season, raising concerns about the safety and integrity of the highly regarded electoral process. Arcasia society has long been defined by its focus on minimal government intervention in business and the economy, leading to the rise of influential corporate-backed figures like Dwight Walker. Recent events, like the further deregulation of some state industries and the deepening privatization of public services, have amplified the power of top corporations, resulting in cutthroat competition for political influence. The surge of instability in Ventry City has revealed the sinister side of the competition, with accusations of corporate interference in elections escalating to violent confrontation. Insiders indicate that several high-profile corporations, including some with ties to private military corporations, are battling for control. employing lethal force to eliminate rivals and secure their interests. Oh boy. In response to the mounting violence, both PMC and the military have been mobilized to safeguard political parties and to maintain order. The president has offered a degree of stability, although the underlying issues continue to fester. As the election season progresses, Ventry City's citizens and the international community anxiously anticipate the outcome, hoping for a peaceful resolution and return stability in Arcatia's usually calm political realm. Valgish man shot after burning Agnolian flag. The vigilant protesters that started against the governor, who was appointed by the Agnolian government, are continuing without slowing down. After supportive statements by the Chancellor Imrich Hegel, the Valgish protesters assembled in front of the government office in Helgisport and waved Vagslandish flags. One Valgish protester was photographed as he climbed the flagpole of the government's office and brought down the Agnolian flag. He was shot by the Agnolian authorities on the island when he attempted to burn the flag with gasoline. Protesters claimed he was shot in the neck and was killed immediately on the scene. The Agnolian government has not released any statement about the subject. The incident sparked further unrest and protests turned into riots around the island. Many Valgish protesters are now calling for Vagsland to save them. Chancellor Hegel was quick to respond to this, saying Vagsland stands together with her people in Hagsland. No regime can murder its citizens because they protested. If this conflict continues, Vagsland holds the right to intervene to save its people. Rold ignores the British plight. Barred from high-paying jobs, discouraged from attending university, spat on in the streets, where's the outrage against Swordland's relentless oppression of the Bloods? For decades, Bloodish swords have been treated as lesser beings, with the law still allowing rampant discrimination for business and educational institutions. We call on the international community to raise awareness of this tragedy, so that we can begin promoting equality among all Swordish citizens. Look, I'm working on it. Give me time. BFF recruitment. It is reported that the villages around Suzerain, a group of BFF missionaries, are seeking to recruit militants to fight for the BFF. Governor Braun reported that the Germandery forces in the area are now actively working towards eliminating the threat. Sure, whatever. A call from Marcel Currenti, Office of the President of Sorla, Maroon Palace. I was in my office looking through the agenda for the upcoming meeting at the Ministry of Economy. The meeting was going to be about the ownership of the Big Four, the four largest companies in Swordland. Heart of Swordland, Bergia Steel, the Swordish State Corporation, and the Nidham Mining Group. Some of these companies were controlled in part or entirely by the state. The others were mostly or completely privatized. I had the power to change that. So let me go ahead and erase this because I did it a while ago and forgot. From my break. Some of these companies were controlled in part or entirely by the state. The others were mostly or completely privatized. I had the power to change that. The phone rang and I put the agenda on. Pick up the phone. Greetings, Mr. President. Greetings, Mr. President. I'm sorry to disturb you before such an important meeting, but I thought now would be a good time to talk about our arrangements. I'm sure you'll agree that the support I and my network have given your administration is nothing but beneficial. After the non-state media in the country has been sharing positive news about you and downplaying negative events. Our partnership has been successful so far. I'm glad you agree. Your public opinion could have nosedived if not for us. I heard him knock on wood. On another note, I wanted to thank you for choosing the underhaul construction to complete the L1 railway. The mayor of Conriat, Chris Star, is a close friend and investor in Underhaul. No contraction of the firm has tripled his returns. Underhaul has been a pleasure to work with. They made an opening a success. It is the #1 construction company in Swordland, after all. Moving on, I can't help but mention the tax break, Mr. President. They have been extraordinarily beneficial to our quarterly performance. HOS is now operating on a much larger revenue pool. You have successfully strengthened the backbone of the Swordish economy. I know! Look at that growth! It's our Lord and Savior over there. Needless to say, I still expect you to reinvest in the surplus back into the economy to create more jobs. Increasing our investments inside Swordland is a key topic in our board discussions. Pause for a few seconds. Out of goodwill, I will share a key piece of information. The Lotherberg Group has contingency plans if you decide to do anything rash that would disrupt their empires. You can't blame them, can you? Imagine someone trying to take your authority and personal wealth away without your consent. I don't see why we should be enemies. Exactly. If everyone plays their card right, it will all be fine. Now, let's talk about those cards. Since the start of your campaign, you've wisely committed to a market economy. Judging by that, I'm sure you're looking to privatize some of the companies that are currently state-owned. Maybe. What do you want? What are you willing to give me, I believe that, therefore, the privatizing both Nidham Mining Group and the Sword State Corporation would be in both our interests. After all, I'm considering buying stock in both these companies. Price both might be too much. I will see what I can do. Think about it this way. It is another step forward to strengthening our economy. Please at least think about it. I mean, I was hoping you'd give me an offer. Because I'm going to do it anyways. I want him to give me stuff. I will be blunt. Mr. Tusk is unfit to be a spokesperson of the Lothenberg Group. His archaic thinking has only preserved a status quo that benefits himself and precious few others. It is high time something changed. I see where this is going. I want him gone. It's time the group had a proper leader. Me. Here's what I propose. A win-win situation. If you promised me a majority of the shares from privatization, you would lose considerable power. Okay. For these companies, Marcel Currenti gets majority of shares. Alright. Which means I could take over. You may recall that one of the terms of our agreements was that I may ask you for one favor. Well, this is it. Ah. Okay. And no longer owe any favors to him. I'll have to think about it. Think about all the free help you've gotten from me, and the many scandals you might have to cover up on your way to the re-election. Well then, I've taken up enough of your time today. This has been a productive call. Thank you for your time, Mr. President. Thank you, Thanks, Marcel. Talk to you later. After a couple of minutes, I went back to reviewing the agenda. Okay, well, I'm gonna do it. I just was wondering if he'd give me anything more. Supreme Court holds Governor Braun accountable. Yeah! Let's go! They've done it! In a groundbreaking ruling, the Supreme Court has charged Governor Braun for his implementations of the divisive resettlement order in the special zone of Bergia, targeting individuals referred to as swords of different blood. The court's decision reinforces the principle that equality and justice must prevail, even at the highest levels of power. Look, I know, Radical, you're going to be annoyed that this is the way it was done, but this was the only way. I believe this is how it was going to be successful. If we did it the other way, this wouldn't have happened. Governor Braun's removal from office and the accompanying fine demonstrate the court's commitment to upholding the rule of law and safeguarding the rights of all citizens, and a testament to the constitutional process. The court has appointed Herbert Kroll, a seasoned member of the NFP, as the acting governor until the end of the term. While the court ruled in favor of Ishval Urson's argument regarding discrimination, it rightfully recognized that the Constitution already guarantees equal rights for all, rejecting his arguments about the conflicts within the Constitution. Loring emphasizes the importance of respecting the constitutional framework that safeguards individual freedoms. As Herbert Kroll assumes office, it is crucial to support his leadership and provide conducive environment for the special zone of Bergia to thrive, and we move forward, upholding justice equally and the vision of united Swordland. Woo! Okay, I get it. It wasn't the best reform, but I did my best, okay? The recent ruling by the Supreme Court has sparked outrage among the Bluish community residing in the city of Urzern. While the initial celebrations over Governor Braun's dismissal were witnessed on the streets, the underlying sentiment remains one of skepticism and frustration towards the government's limited efforts in acknowledging and rectifying the systematic discrimination faced by the Bluish population. Shh, shh, shh. Just wait till after the vote. Wait till after the vote, and I have plans. I have plans. I'm going to reform it all. You're going to get a democratic system. It's going to be great. But shh, be quiet. Don't talk about it. What began as a celebratory gathering soon transformed into a peaceful protest against the new governor, Herbert Kroll, with demonstrations demanding comprehensive reforms and reparations for past injustices. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Just wait. Central to the protest is the demand for the resignation of Chief Justice Hockner, as the British community perceives a lack of empathy and understanding from the highest levels of the judiciary. I'd be okay with that. Governor Kroll's response to the protest has been to deploy special forces to address the escalating tensions. However, it is important to balance security concerns with the protection of individual civil liberties and the promotion of peaceful demonstrations. British Democrats condemn President Rain. Calm. I'm on my way. Just give me a bit more time. Yesterday, a massive crowd has descended upon the streets of Suzerain to express the vehement opposition to President Rain's recent statements defending the soul's interpretation of citizenship rights. The leader of WPB, Fede Agel, also released a statement criticizing the government and the president, saying the people, driven by the shared sense of frustration and marginalization, demand tangible changes to the Constitution that genuinely recognize and embrace the rich British heritage and culture. The president's steadfast defense of Article 6 and 7 of the current Constitution has ignited widespread outrage, with protesters viewing it as a stark reminder of the government's unwillingness to address the pressing issues faced by the British community. Give me a bit. The radical, with its unyielding determination and wavering spirit, stands united with British Democrats and stand ready to challenge the status quo and forge a future where equal rights for everyone prevail. Supreme Court decision falls short of justice again. In a controversial ruling, the Supreme Court has, as always, failed to deliver true justice in the case against Governor Braun's discriminatory policies. While the court acknowledged some aspects of Ishval-Urson's argument regarding discrimination, the minor concession is hardly a victory for British rights or a catalyst for meaningful change. It is. This is more than we could have gotten otherwise, okay? I believe that. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk us getting less than if I did nothing. Instead of taking a bold stand against discrimination, the court has chosen to play a dangerous game of politics, appointing Herbert Kroll from the Ultranationalist NFP, I'm not a fan of that though, as acting governor. This decision is an affront to the principles of justice and inclusivity, as the NFP has long been associated with fascist ideologies and undermined the rights and freedoms of the British people. Moreover, even though President Rain wouldn't have done anything better, the court's decision to bypass his authority in appointing a new governor, instead of granting power to the vice governor, further undermines the democratic process. I would have done something better. I would have put someone who's better in that position, at least. It is now more crucial than ever to mobilize united and demand genuine reforms that will truly safeguard the rights and dignity of all British citizens. Only through a collective effort can we overcome the injustices perpetuated by the court and its misguided decisions. Refugees suffer because of Rain. As more and more Bloods and Wessex attempt to flee Welland, we are seeing the consequences of Anton Rain's inhumane border policy. Turned away from Swordsland, families face homelessness, starvation, and persecution from Victor Monk's regime. Some head to Lesbia, where they are accepted, but most undergo the country's labyrinth asylum process. Politicians that are already complaining of a refugee crisis. We must act now, before more lives are lost. Arcatian-Quinali relations, a fresh chapter. After tense negotiations, including critical dispute resolution between Canal and the Arcatian private military companies, Arcatia and Quinal have successfully restored their diplomatic relations, marking a significant milestone in global geopolitics. The restoration of ties comes amidst growing tensions within the ATO, as Quinal displayed signs of distancing itself from full membership to observer status, leading to a delicate balancing act. The ATO's response, including warnings to PMC CEOs and concessions to affirm Quinal's autonomy, underscores the strategic importance of this member state. Quinal will remain a full member of the ATO for the foreseeable future. Good, I'm glad to hear it. Vlachoval. Increased support for British rights. Public opinion in cities like Vlachoval, known for their significant middle-class liberal population, is undergoing a noticeable shift, with a surge in support for British rights. The case of Ishval-Urson has struck a chord with many individuals, leading to a growing sense of empathy and solidarity. The recent statements from officials of the WPB urging the government to incorporate changes to Articles 6 and 7 have resonated strongly with the Swedish population of these cities. Calls for reform to recognize and protect British rights are gaining traction, and there's a palpable sentiment among residents that the time has come for meaningful change. The time has not come. The time is soon. The city is currently home to a large number of refugees, the majority of whom are bloodish and have recently fled from Welland. Many of them are living in makeshift camps outside of the city, where living conditions are very poor. Those who are not in the camps are struggling to find work, and most are homeless. Well, yeah. Massive rally condemning President Rain. A massive crowd have gathered in Suzerain to condemn President Rain for his recent statements defending soulless interpretation of citizenship rights. The people are calling for actual changes to be made to the Constitution that recognize the bloodish people and their culture. They believe that the present defense of the Constitution is a clear indication that the government has no intention of introducing significant reforms. But it isn't. Illegal crossing rise at Welland border. Border police have reported increased number of arrests as British Wessex refugees attempt to enter the country from Welland. Temporary detention centers have erected in Suzerain to process the deportation of illegal entries. Can we just let them? It's like, that's a way to get around it. Supreme Court finds Governor Braun guilty. Today, the Supreme Court has charged Governor Braun for enacting the resettlement order, which discriminated against swords of different blood living in the special zone of Bergia. The court ruled in favor of Ishval Erzin's argument, and Governor Braun was fined and removed from office. However, the court did not agree with the other arguments put forward by Erzin, and maintained that the Constitution already provided equal rights to everyone. As a replacement for the governor, the Supreme Court ruled that in extraordinary circumstances such as this, the deputy of the governor shall assume duty until the end of the term instead of the president appointing a new governor. The deputy who will assume the office is Herbert Kroll, an old member of the NFP. The court's decision has garnered mixed reactions from the public, with some applauding the decision to hold the governor accountable for his action, while they remain skeptical at the effectiveness of the ruling, citing the continued discrimination against the British people. Most of the British population of Bergia condemned the decision, especially due to Governor Braun's replacement, who they believe may prove to be worse than Governor Braun. Yeah, I didn't want them to be there either. General Staff releases negative statement. Earlier this week, the General Staff held a meeting in which Isaac Valencia had voiced his concerns about the administration. According to rumors, Valencia said, if this president doesn't demonstrate the leadership that Swordland needs, both domestically and abroad, then it's time for a new person to move palace. The sooner the better. The fate of our republic depends on it. Yeah, whatever. We're doing the best we can. But I think this is a good time to go ahead and end this session. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button. And as always, peace.